I have had a topic floating around in the back of my skull for quite a while, probably since the beginning of the year when I did the mini series about the Hynek scale of close encounters. And it kind of started with the last chapter, the close encounters of the fifth kind, or the CE5 movement, and it got me thinking a lot about the 50s flying saucer contactee movement that was huge in that decade. And then about a month ago, I ran across this documentary called Farewell Good Brothers from 1991, all about the 50s contactee movement. And it sort of rekindled that idea, lit the match, so to speak. So, on this episode of Too Boldly Pod, I kind of want to explore that thought process that I had about the correlation between 50s contactees and the CE5 movement that's big right now. And I hope I don't come off as disingenuous or rude to people. I might, and it's not intended if I do. So, if at any point during this podcast you don't agree with something that I say, or maybe I need to be corrected, that's perfectly fine. Just let me know in the comments because I'm not perfect. I don't know everything. Nobody does. And I could be wrong, and maybe I'm just not seeing something. But on this episode of Too Boldly Pod, we are going to explore the 1950s flying saucer contactee movement. And almost from the time that it blew up, people really thought that all those people were just a bunch of kooks. And maybe some of them were, but maybe some of them weren't. Maybe some of those people were just, maybe they were taken aboard a flying saucer and shown areas of this vast universe that we have never experienced before. But maybe they are just kooks looking for 5 minutes of attention, 15 minutes of fame. 50s versions of being a viral influencer, I suppose, is the best way to put it. But most people think that the whole 50s flying saucer craze blossomed from the avalanche of B movies about flying saucers that were being released in that era. But it's actually the opposite. The whole flying saucer craze started before the whole movie craze did. And yes, there were alien movies and flying saucer movies before, but not like the way they started to be portrayed in the 1950s. And it all started, as we all know, it started with Kenneth Arnold, which we're going to talk about a little bit later. That's where the name Flying Saucer came from. And of course, Roswell. And then the first sort of big unexplained one wasn't the Kenneth Arnold, the Roswell one. It really started by two people, two very unassuming, hardworking farm type people, live off the land type people in McMinnville, Oregon, with this picture that still has not been debunked. And this is kind of what set everything off. So, on this episode, we are going to explore the 50s flying saucer contactee movement. So, if you feel like you need to put on a tinfoil hat, then go ahead and enjoy the ride. The flying saucer craze really did take off in the 1950s, specifically in 1952. And if you're so interested, you could scroll back 4 or 5 years into the audio archive of this podcast and listen to my podcast about the year we made contact, I think was the name of the podcast. 1952 was the big year for UFOs in at least the United States, if not globally. Specifically within the United States, there were all sorts of flying saucer reports, including two instances in back to back weekends where UFOs buzzed the nation's capital and fighter pilots were launched to engage. So the 50s was a big decade for flying saucers. And with that, as you might expect, came the flying saucer craze and the contactee craze. So much so that, kind of like now, people started having UFO and spacecraft conventions. Mainly, they happened throughout the whole country, but the big ones were in California. And you got all sorts of very interesting characters. And this was at a time where the media wasn't 24/7 like it is today. The media was essentially your three major networks, your ABC, CBS, NBC, and some radio media. So it wasn't like just flipping open your phone. Did I just say flip open your phone? Turning on your phone. I'm not going back 20 years to flip phones. I trust me, I'm not. I'm not saying that. It just, you open up your phone. I'm not going to edit that either and see what the news is, or turn on your TV to 8,000 channels. People were lucky in the 50s. I'm guessing, I wasn't alive, but lucky to have three channels to choose from. But the news reports needed something to fill their news reports. So they went to a lot of these spacecraft, UFO, flying saucer conventions and interviewed some of these folks that claim to be taken aboard flying saucers.
Who is Klala?
Klala is the name of an individual who has contacted us perhaps 15 times in the last year. He identifies himself as being from one of the planets of the sun Aldebaran.
Howard, would you tell us in your own words about your trip to Venus, how it started?
Well, as I say, it started first with a very decided tingling all over my body. This tingling finally extended to the mind area, and there was a clarification of mind, such as it's hard to believe. I seemed to become one with the entire universe. Everything in the universe seemed to be contracted down to one small dot.
Now notice, God or the space visitors do not endow one person with a privilege and leave everybody else empty-handed. No, the people who believe in flying saucers and yet have never seen one can tell you more about a flying saucer than one who has been in it.
Now, that I can honestly say is probably true. I did have a sighting in my early teen years. Do I know for a fact it was a UFO? No, but it was certainly something that I have never seen before and I haven't seen since. And I have been studying and infatuated with this topic my entire life. So that statement that he just made, that people that are just interested and never seen a flying saucer know more than people that have actually been in one, is pretty spot on. Going back to the previous lady, you have to remember this is the 50s. We still didn't know a lot that we know now about the universe, specifically our own solar system. And all the movies were coming out with all these aliens from Mars and Jupiter and Venus. And now we've learned that we really couldn't land on Venus because we'd be dead in a matter of seconds.
Because the one who has been in it, he has to be shown the hard way. And I was one of those hardheads. But I do believe what I see. And I am one of those who was inside a flying saucer.
Now, how many crew members were aboard?
I never saw more than 12 or 14 at any one time, but they...
Now, pay attention to his story as he goes on, because he really makes the aliens sound very human, right down to their dress. And might I add, very 1950s human as to what men and women would be wearing in the 1950s.
The captain told me that there were 32 men and a woman in each one, and they have many, all identical. They told me that language was no barrier to them anywhere. They could speak any language.
So they told you that in English?
Yes.
What were their clothes like?
The woman had a radiant red box-pleated skirt and a...
Yes, because aliens wear box-pleated skirts just like the women in the 1950s did.
black velvet appearing blouse and a black and red tam or beret, and the men had clothes very similar to our Greyhound bus drivers. Very similar uniforms.
And you talked to him, you asked him?
Now, this is one of the most famous contactees, and we're going to talk about him a little bit more, because not only was he one of the biggest contactees, he was also proven to be one of the biggest scam artists within the flying saucer contactee movement. But we'll talk more about him in a little bit.
Have more or less on gestures and mental telepathy, as it is known, talk transfer.
He does not speak. I mean, they
He
don't have
didn't at the time, but I have met him since, and he does speak very well English as well as in the other language.
Did he tell you where he came from?
Yes, this time he told me he was from Venus, although I have met men from other planets as well.
My own impression is that we are going to see more and more of these visitors from space, and that before too long, the evidence will be incontrovertible.
Incontroversial? Incontrovertible? Maybe he just had a slip of the tongue.
You will have on your TV screens and on your movie screens concrete evidence that the ships are here and that they are real, and they're not fantastic things which have been cooked up to make a movie.
Now, do you think a lot of people are kind of the same in today's age, where they see somebody doing an interview and they want to be part of it, so they just go up there and say whatever just so they can get on TV or get out an TikTok video or something like that, like they do now? Do you think they were still doing that in the 1950s? Absolutely, because you could see the crowd behind all of those interviews. There was thousands of people at these conventions. And do I think they were all on the level? Well, let's go back to that previous interview, and we'll talk about that before we move on to the next video. Now, I mentioned earlier that we were going to talk more about this gentleman because he is the biggest of all the 50s flying saucer contactees, and he is one George Adamski. He wrote a few books and released a ton of photos and movie footage of the flying saucers that took him aboard their flying saucer and took him to Venus and Jupiter and Saturn and Mars and everywhere you can think of. Here's the thing about it, and you can seek out his movies online pretty easily if you really want to, but they were clearly man made. And and some of them weren't even good. They, I mean, in this day and age where we get great CGI, AI created flying saucers that people try to pass off as real, and I just said flying saucers, UFOs that people pass off as real. Back then, they didn't have all that stuff. So it was the classic, put a couple pie pans together or build a model and put them on a string and take your 8 millimeter camera and film it or take a Polaroid of it. And yeah, they were almost comically horrible. And he was outed specifically after he released his book because he was taking money from people. And George Adamski did turn out to be kind of a con man within the flying saucer contactee movement. But let's not just put a whole blanket blame on all of them being kooks just because of one con man. So you saw the first wave of interviews that I shared with you. And if you're not a believer, you're probably thinking, these people are out there. And if you are a believer in it, you might actually think some of them are plausible. And then other people might be thinking, well, you could tell they're lying because they said they went to Venus and Jupiter and all these places that we honestly cannot land on because, you know, we'd be dead if we did. So there's no way a living being could be on there. But you also have to think that was the limit of our knowledge about the universe. So were they making it all up, or is that what the aliens that took them told them that they were going to?
I saw an intensely bright white-green object in the sky at about 45 or 50 degrees off the horizon. It must have been traveling at incredible speed since it disappeared out of sight in a matter of a second or two. Now, I wouldn't want to say that this was one of those so-called flying saucers, but whatever it was an object and not an illusion.
That's actually a fairly credible sounding UFO because it covers all the bases of everything that we've heard.
I suppose we should start back in the late 1940s with the first sighting by a gentleman by the name of Mr. Kenneth Arnold, who was a...
And this is, I talked about, we were going to circle back to the Kenneth Arnold thing. This gentleman gives a good explanation of how the whole contactee movement took off from that point.
Businessman out of Boise, Idaho, who later went on to become one of our congressmen.
Actually, he didn't. He ran, but he didn't win.
It so happened he was flying his aircraft, his private aircraft, in the general vicinity of Mount Rainier, and he noticed these silvery discs seemingly playing tag with him and then passing by him very swiftly. And this is how we first began to coin the term flying saucers.
Now, he's kind of right there. The phrase was coined by a reporter that interviewed Kenneth Arnold. Kenneth Arnold said they were like two saucers on top of each other, skipping across the water. So the reporter coined them flying saucers, and that's where the name came from.
To coin the term flying saucers.
Army fighter planes are on patrol for flying saucers. Cameras installed to photograph them. Portland, Oregon, the area from which came the first weird reports. This flying saucer patrol shows how the Air Forces, while not putting too much stock in the mysterious things in the sky, are investigating. The control tower's in touch and on the watch. So are a whole lot of people these days. They're seeing flying saucers everywhere. Flocks of fantastic discs flying through the air. Is there something to it? Or is it an epidemic of people just seeing things? Even the goat seems to be looking for the mysterious discs, and the bear's on the alert. Or maybe there's a flying saucer with milk. Meow!
This is the photo.
Now, one thing is true. That newsreel, they did. When people started seeing all of the flying saucers in the 1950s, the government and the Air Force specifically was sending out patrols to areas where sightings were made to check out to see if they could find anything. So at least in that aspect, they were taking flying saucers somewhat seriously to be sending the Air Force up looking for them.
Photograph of a flying saucer taken by myself, and it reminded me of two straw hats stuck together at the brim. This was turned over to the proper Air Force intelligence authorities. Further investigation.
I feel fortunate and also unfortunate by being in the position that we happen to be this past Monday evening at 9:29 p.m. But we do want the public to know that we definitely did see this flying saucer.
Jack was flying the airplane at the time over Stuttgart, Arkansas, when he nudged me and said, "Andy, look out here. What do you think this is?" And I looked up there, and there was this bright flashing light coming up to our left and a little above us. And after it passed over us, why, Jack and I were amazed that what we had seen turned out to be a flying saucer.
Mr. Rowe, you're certainly one of the world's leading contactees. How many trips have you made to outer space?
Well, I'd say 350 or a few more.
When was the last one?
Well, first part of June.
And who did you go with?
Well, people from Jupiter.
Okay.
And where did you take off?
From my home.
Any special launching pad there?
No, there isn't. They come pick me up in a car.
He told me...
They come and pick me up in a car.
His name was Valiant Thor. He grabbed my hand. His hand was skin soft as a lady's or a baby's skin, but it was a grip of a man. And we spent 30 minutes, mostly me asking questions and he giving answers. And he claimed that he was from the inside of the planet that our Bible calls the morning and the evening star, the planet Venus. He said yes. All of this time, Mr. Thor was at the Pentagon for 3 years, mind you. And he was going and coming at will. He was brought to the President of the United States, Dwight Eisenhower, and Richard Nixon, offered to give them information on how the American people could successfully live without sickness, without poverty, without disease, and without death. They told him, "We're sorry that we cannot accept the information that you're freely giving us because it will ruin the economy of this nation." Well, sir, Commander Thor left on the morning of March 16th, 1960, on the outskirts of Alexandria, Virginia, where his spaceship came down. He went into the spaceship and disappeared from...
Now, the Valiant Thor thing is an interesting story. I've been toying with doing a full podcast about the story of Valiant Thor because he's not the only person that has that story. Other people do that even claim to have pictures of this Valiant Thor sitting in a congressional meeting So maybe we'll circle back at some point and talk about Valiant Thor.
Public interest in the last few years has centered on a phenomenon which has been identified as flying saucers. This phenomenon has led to many stories. Much fact, much fiction, little fact. Well, isn't that camera? Public interest in the last few years has increased very greatly in a phenomenon which has been identified as flying saucers. These stories have led to much fiction and much fancy. I would like to separate a few facts from some of the fiction that has been traveling around across the country.
Now, you see, even at one point, I included this for a reason, because at some point they decided to start reining in all of these reports. And this is kind of where things blew up, and they started calling them all fake and coming up with random, sometimes lame explanations for all of these flying saucer sightings.
These myths will continue for months or even years to come. For the last 4 years, the Navy has had a project in the study of cosmic rays which has lent some fact to these stories.
Inflating an immense balloon aboard the USS Norton Sound, the Navy prepares for further study of the elusive cosmic rays somewhere in the Pacific. That's the news. A secondary consideration clears up the mystery of the so-called flying saucers. For it is these monsters, which rise 19 miles and attain diameters of 100 feet, that have been mistaken for the apparitions called flying saucers. At great altitudes, they tell us, these elongated enormities flatten out like plates. Mystery ended.
See, they have been doing weather balloon explanations for a very, very long time.
Well, this device right here is one that we've used to contact the people in the flying saucers. It receives the messages on a beam of light, and it is in turn translated by this unit and brought out as intelligible voice and speech.
You mean to say you've actually received messages from
That's
people in
right.
flying saucers?
That's right.
How about letting me try it, Dick, and see if I can get something on it?
You're perfectly welcome, sir. Wait, here we are.
Now, what am I expected to do? Talk? Call them or what?
No, this device right now, if there was a saucer in sight, you'd be picking up the message.
What do you mean in sight? I'd have to see it in the sky?
That's right, sir. The ships always seem to line themselves up with the unit before they transmit back to you.
There's no way I can contact it unless I see it.
That's right. Mm-hmm. On some occasions, the messages are received by shortwave. On other times, by means of modulated light beam reception equipment. On a few occasions, they've even come by long-distance telephone.
Do you have all of that equipment in your home?
Yes, sir.
It's interesting that everything, all this contact comes from technology of the day. Sometimes they call me by long distance telephone. Some of you out there watching this probably don't even know what a long distance telephone call is. But it does seem to be technology of the 50s, predominantly with these aliens.
We do.
Well, could we listen to this particular tape?
You certainly may.
Fine, let's listen.
Greetings in the light of our radiant one. I am Kuala. My purpose in speaking with you, my brothers and sisters, is in reference to what is termed your world situation. As all of you know, your planet at this time is experiencing a period of great unrest.
There is a term used often on the closing of the messages, which they tell us is a portion of a universal tongue that is spoken by space people.
And what's that particular word?
Adene Vasu Barakis.
And what does it mean?
Literally translated, as they've told us, it means farewell, good brothers.
And once again, how do you say it?
Adene Vasu Barakis.
Adune Vasu
Baraga.
Now, you're getting the last couple clips of people that claim to channel, as you're going to hear in a second, channel these aliens. And then that gentleman who clearly recorded aliens talking didn't get that from a movie or anything, especially the Farewell Good Brothers. Sounded a lot like, well, we'll let this gentleman channel an alien so you can hear what they really sound like.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My dear friend.
Your name is?
I am known as Ethereus.
Where do you come from?
The planet Venus.
Where are you speaking from now?
I'm sorry, my dear friend. I cannot answer that question for you.
I had wondered simply whether you were in a vehicle of some kind, a spaceship described by Mr. King when he was talking to me, or whether you were in your normal abode. But you can't tell me that?
No.
So, as you might expect, media will go towards the more fantastical to get people to tune in and watch or listen. So, of course, they're going to go to the outrageous folks like that gentleman. And I implore you to seek out that documentary, Farewell Good Brothers, and watch it, because a couple of those clips from the 50s, they interview those folks again in the 1990s. I'm sure it was probably filmed in the late 80s, but they haven't really changed much. I mean, they've aged, but their thought processes and what they believe haven't changed in the slightest. But all of that you saw over the previous 20 minutes or so really got me thinking about the correlation between those people, the contactees from the 1950s, to the folks that are into CE5 today. Essentially, what CE5 is, if you're not informed on it, is people who gather together, sometimes alone, sometimes in groups of people, and sort of meditate and channel aliens or beings from another dimension. And a lot of the messages from the CE5 aliens and the contactee aliens from the 50s are much the same. In the 50s, everyone was worried about nuclear war, so the aliens were warning about our destructive nature with atomic weapons. And today, it's a lot of the same thing. We still have that fear of annihilation, and the aliens that get channeled in CE5 are warning us that we must change our ways, become more enlightened, which isn't a bad thing, to stave off oblivion, for lack of a better phrase. So it's almost like two different generations doing the exact same thing within the crux of UAPs or flying saucers or UFOs. But the CE5 folks now aren't quite as gregarious as some of the folks were back then. And clearly technology has advanced tenfold since the 1950s to now. So we can take better pictures and better videos of the things that we witness in the skies if we happen to be lucky enough to capture it. But on the flip side of that, things are also much easier to fake today, convincingly. Back then, like I said, the whole Adamski thing was clearly nothing but a big shell game to him. He was making stuff up. It was clearly fake. And today, people can do that too. I'm not saying they are, but it's much easier to make stuff more convincing these days than you could in the 1950s. So, do I think the CE5 and the 50s contactees are one and the same? I think some of them are, but I don't think, because I think there's an earnestness in the CE5 movement. People truly do want an enlightened world to live in. I think a lot of the 50s contactees were goofballs or people just looking to get famous, or like Adamski looking to scam people. But do I think there were some people that were honest? Absolutely, I do. But are they one and the same, the contactee movement and CE5? I mean, at the bedrock, yeah, they are. But there are differences. But hey, maybe I am completely wrong. Maybe you think I am the one that needs to put a tinfoil hat on. And if you do have comments, let me know. Wherever it is you're watching or listening to this, I'd love to hear your thoughts about the 50s flying saucer contactees and or the people that are into CE5. And as always, don't forget to click like and subscribe. And if you really feel like it or enjoyed it, click share. It would help me out a lot. I don't have a closer for this, so I'll just close with
Adonai Vasu Barakis.